Several times a month, Creekside Books and Coffee in Skaneateles hosts readings by well-known authors and regional writers. A recent guest was Rebecca Berry, who discussed her first novel, Later at the Bar. Later at the Bar is a collection of 10 related stories that take place in a rural town in upstate New York. What connects them is Lucy's Tavern, which Booklist describes as a Rust Belt Cheers. After reading excerpts from the book, Berry told those gathered how the series of stories unfolded.
Originally, I started with a story. There's an advice columnist in this collection who is very drunk and has a terrible time following her own advice. And that was the book I really wanted to write, was about her. And so I started with that one. And then there's a story about a snowstorm that takes over the bar, and everybody has to stay in the bar late, and some drama happens. So those were my first two stories. And then that character Harlan that you just heard about kept coming up. And he kept taking over every story. I wrote one about him, then I wrote another about him, and then I kept getting away from the people I wanted to write about, so I killed him. And I brought the story I was in graduate school at the time, and I brought the story with him dead in it into my workshop. And everybody said, "Oh no, you've killed him. You know, that's terrible." And I said, "Well, he's taking over the whole book. I don't want to write about him. So he's dead. I'm sorry." And they said, "Oh, that's, well, all right, do what you want to do." And then I went home and started another story about someone else, and it ended up being about that stupid character. So his relationship with this one woman is the narrative arc that is the common thread through the book.
Berry says she did not write the stories in the order they appear, and what you'll read is a lot different than the original draft she submitted to publishers.
Nobody quite knew what to do with it. They were sort of like, this is a collection of stories, but it's not. They're all kind of linked, but it's not really a novel, and then they didn't know where to put it. Was it chick lit? Was it women's fiction? Nobody knew what to do with it. So I sort of thought, there must be something that I think is in this book that's not coming up on the page yet. So I put it in a closet. And then I was pregnant and broke about a year and a half later. And my husband and I were sitting there saying, what are we going to do? And I said, I'm going to haul that thing. I was going through everything, every written thing I had, saying, what can make money? What can make money? What can make... So I pulled this thing out. And something about being pregnant, I was able to look at it all, and this is going to sound, well, I don't care how it sounds. I was able to look at it all as a mother differently than I had as a graduate student who didn't have children. And somehow, that's when I wrote the first story, which was sort of an overview of the book. And that character, in a way, is sort of, in my mind, kind of mothering all those broken people at the bar. And so there was something about that stage of life that made me able to pull it together. And then we knew it was a novel in stories, and then it was able to come together.
Berry says the book started out being autobiographical, with the characters based on people she knew in a university town. But that soon changed. I
got very attached to the sort of nostalgia I had for growing up in Lansing, New York, which is a very small town outside of Ithaca, and it's a very rural place. And I was really drawn to the people I knew who lived there, who lived hard and fast, but really knew how to enjoy the world around them and the landscape, and they just seemed to really enjoy themselves, even if it was in a sort of reckless way. So that ended up imbuing the characters more than a university town, which I actually wasn't that interested in. I was more interested in the recklessness of people who are really sort of thrown into a world that's dictated by weather and farming and truck driving and things like that are really where I think you are more connected to the landscape. Because the landscape is a big part of the book. It's, I think, as much of a character as a lot of the people.
Berry says that although some readers consider her characters to be losers, she doesn't see it that way at all.
For those people, I don't have much judgment. I really think they're wonderful, and I met all those people again. I grew up with them, and then I met them again after I'd been living in New York for 7 years. And I remember somebody saying to me, God, your characters are such losers. And I was like, really? And then I thought, well, I had been around winners for 7 years, and I felt like my life was getting very homogenous. We were all the same. We were all university educated. We all were ambitious. And when I went back to my hometown and started drinking at this bar, I felt like I was surrounded by these people who had very different outlooks, and I thought the losers had a lot to say and were interesting and actually had the insight and wit and imagination and wisdom that a lot of my winter friends didn't have.
Later at the Bar by Rebecca Berry is published by Simon & Schuster and sells for $22. For information on upcoming readings at Creekside Books and Coffee or to sign up for our e-letter, go to www.creeksidebooks.com.